Star Trek. Is it just a TV show? Is Star Wars just a movie? Star Trek is the simple name for a television show that has literally changed the face of modern society. So many things were inspired by Star Trek, from the flip phone to listening to multiple music tracks at one time. Star Trek has had numerous bits of ancillary media released to capitalize upon its success, from comic books to novels to models. Video games have been fairly interesting, seeing as how Star Trek actually predates the very concept of the video game. The first Star Trek games were fairly simple. Some were just vector graphics arcade games, and some others were just point-and-click adventure games. Really, transitioning Star Trek to the video game media was not an easy prospect, seeing as how Star Trek was less action-oriented and more cerebral in many aspects. Meaning that Star Wars made for much better video games than Star Trek. But in the space year 2001, a video game was released that capitalized on Star Trek in the best possible way. And that video game was Star Trek Voyager Elite Force. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Star Trek is a franchise that I was first introduced to by my mother. She was a big fan of it back in the day and is still a fan of it to this day, and at Space CityCon 2013 even got to meet the original Chekhov. My mother was a fan of Star Trek back when it was seen as a boys' show, back when it was seen as a male-oriented show. But like today, she liked to break the bonds of society and watch whatever she bloody well wanted. Star Trek has since become the great leveler, and it seemed to appeal to both males and females equally. But that was just TOS. After its legendary 3-season run, it would take until the late 80s for Star Trek to return to the TV screen. Star Trek: The Next Generation was at one time considered the best Star Trek TV series, with its stalwart Shakespearean Captain Picard, its numerous high-quality side characters, and great stories. The Big D looked like it could do no wrong. In recent years, many of its flaws have come to be seen, such as sloppy writing in places and a rather low-quality Season 1 and Season 7. In recent years, appreciation for the even better Deep Space Nine has come to the fore. Oh yes, for years many an SF fan has derided Deep Space Nine as simply a rip-off of Babylon 5. Realistically, if you've actually watched both shows, which I have, you'll find that the only similarity between both shows is the fact that they both take place in space. It is quite amusing to see that after finally all these years, all those SF fans that call TNG the greatest show of all time 111 are finally giving Deep Space Nine its due. Thankfully, I, the mighty and wise General, knew that DS9 was far superior to TNG long before. Deep Space Nine had a greater consistency in terms of continuity and overall episode quality. It might have some slow-paced or boring episodes, but they were never really that bad. And I felt that for years, in terms of sheer numbers, Deep Space Nine by far had the largest number of standout episodes. And while Captain Picard was great and all, I felt that Avery Brooks came very, very close to Patrick Stewart's acting ability. Concurrent with Deep Space Nine, there was another show. A show that is a bit more contentious. Star Trek Voyager. This show and I have an interesting history. I started watching it after watching DS9 on cable. Well, you see, during DS9's initial run, I was rather young and didn't really get into it. But in my early teen years, I watched Deep Space Nine every chance I could get. And after watching it, I moved on to Voyager fully. During Voyager's initial run, I was cognizant enough to watch a bit of it, and I did see its finale and the promo for Enterprise. But by that point, I had missed most of the show's run, and so for years I watched a number of reruns at 3 a.m. on its original network. Not having had a chance to watch it fully, I thought it was pretty good at the time. Then I bought it on DVD, and well... Voyager suffered from the same issues as TNG, only worse. TNG kept its characters consistent, but its plot could get either boring or idiotic. Voyager suffered from the problem where the characters would drift over time, and the plots were usually complete crap. That is not to say that the entire show was bad. Voyager, when it had a good writer, had some amazing episodes. But sadly, these amazing episodes were very few and far between. What it needed was what Star Trek Enterprise got. For its first 3 seasons, Star Trek Enterprise was like Voyager, only worse. But then in season 4, they got a new showrunner, Manny Coto, and holy crap, ladies and gentlemen, did that show reach DS9 levels of quality, the series finale notwithstanding. If Voyager had received a new showrunner, it could have been up there with Deep Space Nine, as its premise was excellent. A lone ship trapped half a galaxy away. Its characters were actually pretty good when the writing matched the potential. As we all know, Raven Software knows how to write, and so today we're going to be taking a look at a game that uses the Star Trek Voyager premise and cast to its fullest potential. Today, we're going to take a look at a game that really earns the Elite in its title. Today, we are taking a look at Star Trek Voyager Elite Force. I first played this game on the PlayStation 2. Why the 2, you may ask, and not the PC? I had never even seen this game for sale for the PC, and I only discovered the version on the 2 by going through some games held in paper cases. I saw that it was a Star Trek game, and being a Star Trek game, I snapped it up. And by the great Chakotay, was I glad that I did, as I found it to be an excellent game. And having played the 2 version and now the PC version, I have to say that the version on the 2 was not that bad, and it was a good console port. Star Trek Voyager Elite Force is a first-person shooter of the highest order. A first-person shooter Star Trek game was an excellent idea. Many Star Trek games were difficult to get into, many were just point-and-click adventure games, and there were a few simulators with manuals the size of phone books. I personally was rather partial to Starfleet Command 2 and 3, but those games were pretty damn tough to play as you had to know what everything on your ship did. And those games were based on tabletop games, meaning that everything ran on a dice roll system. So here we have a Star Trek game that is Star Trek in every way. But instead of having to read through a giant manual, instead of having to use moon logic, you actually have some straightforward gameplay. In Elite Force, you can choose from either a male or female ensign named Monroe. The concept of gender selection would make a comeback in Raven Software's seminal FPS Jedi Academy. As Ensign Monroe, you have access to numerous phase plasma pulse weapons. Time for weapon reviews. Hey, just what you see here, pal. You start out with the standard Dustbuster phaser. It's the pistol analog and has infinite ammo, but unlike the pistol in Republic Commando, it's actually useful, as it can still disintegrate basic enemies. Although, like with all Star Trek hand weapons, it was nerfed between TNG and Voyager. In TNG, it was said that the Dustbuster on higher settings could blow half a building apart. Yeah, we never see or hear about that again. Next, we have the Stay R-15, the Federation's combat rifle that is even weaker than the Dustbuster. It is a standby weapon as it does good damage against most enemies, and its alternative fire can one-shot just about everything. Then you have the iMod. Remember, this is a first-person shooter in the Star Trek universe, meaning that you will need some weapon to take out the Borg. And thus, we have the Infinity Modulator, a weapon that modulates a phaser signal so that you can blow away the Borg with ease. This is called good writing. Sadly, in the show itself, the Federation is only as intelligent as the plot will allow. And always does the plot have to make sure that the Federation is really, really stupid. Next, we have the Space K-47. It is a basic phase plasma combat rifle with a grenade launcher as its alternative fire mode. This, along with the Spay R-15, will be your go-to weapon.
After that, we have some of the more esoteric weapons. This is the Stasis Blaster that does decent damage, but is not really worth using. Then there is the Chain Blaster that will rip through most enemies, but it seems to not really be that worth it either. Then there is the Grenade Launcher, and it is good for doing indirect damage against enemies, but I only found myself using it a few times. Then there is the really cool Portable Photon Torpedo Rocket Launcher. It's good for the few bosses that you fight, but it's not used much either. And last but not least is the Force Lightning Gun. It is meant to be some sort of welding tool, but it uses the same graphics as the Force Lightning in the later Jedi Knight games. It's fun to use, but you'll not be using it all that much.
As you can see from the constant refrain of, "You're not going to be using it much," the game has a minor problem with its enemy difficulty.
The enemies for Elite Force are varied, and they are never just the same guys in differently colored shirts. But they are just too easy to fight, and there are never enough of them to fight that it really becomes a challenge. Some of them just have melee attacks, meaning you can slaughter them with impunity. When you do face enemies with ranged attacks, they are few and far between, and they are still easy to kill. The game gives you way too much health and ammo as well. That being said though, the combat is still fun and fast-paced, and does not get boring, but it does not require you to change up your tactics all that much, and it never really requires you to think all that much either. And, well, the quick save key can be your friend, but you're not going to need it all that much.
One common asshole argument about classic FPS games is that they let you carry an entire arsenal at one time. There's even a Mythbusters segment where somebody tries to carry a whole bunch of weapons on their person. You know, I hate to break this to you guys, but video games aren't real.
Raven Software, however, was not satisfied with the not real argument. Instead, they took Star Trek tech and ensured that you could carry all those lovely big guns realistically. They give you a transporter buffer that allows you to carry all your weapons and equipment easily by just dematerializing them. Kinda makes you wonder why the rest of Trek didn't think of such a practical application for transporter technology. Alright, gotta nerf the Federation. Every time I hear that transporter sound when you switch weapons, I cannot help but grin just a little bit. That is Raven Software not only having their cake and eating it too, but going back for another piece with extra icing. Damn, I want some cake. Level design is both as excellent as one would expect from Raven Software and kind of disappointing all at the same time. In Elite Force, you are part of an Elite Force, meaning most of the time you will have team members with you. 2 years before COD would popularize the concept of AI squad mates. The AI squad mates here are kind of useless, and they can barely negotiate a straight line. It was quite ambitious for Raven to attempt AI squad mates in 2001, and they work well enough, but by having them be such a huge part of the game, Raven had to make the levels fairly simplistic so that they would not get caught on walls. And sometimes even then they do. Like this bastard right here. He got caught on this bit of level architecture, but I didn't know it. Oh no, I was wandering on the level looking for a button I missed, only to turn around and find this bastard standing here like a dumbass. Oh, you're stuck on a wall, are you? Here, let me help you.
What? Don't look at me like that. I wandered around that level for half an hour. He totally had it coming.
Linear levels aside, the trademark Raven puzzles are still here. Case in point, in the first level, you have to cross this chasm. The game does not tell you where to go, and you have to puzzle out that you climb on this green moving thing, walk across this grate, and then get on another green moving thing. All in the first 5 minutes of the game. In the modern era, there would be arrows, there would be all sorts of markers, so that the player would get across it easily. All through the game, there are little puzzles like this, and they really make the game that much more satisfying to play. Graphically, the graphics are there. They're a little better than what you'd find on the Vectrex.
Oh, I just put a big target on my head. Sorry, I mean the Vectrex has the best graphics of all time. Who knew the Vectrex of all things would have such a vocal community?
I will freely admit that Elite Force has absolutely crap graphics. Most of the graphics in this game have not held up well at all despite using the id Tech 3 engine. The level textures still look pretty good and the weapons still look halfway decent. But damn, the 3D models for the people look absolutely horrible. And I think I know why they look more horrible in this game than in other id Tech 3 games. And I think it comes from the human mind, ladies and gentlemen. We know what these people are supposed to look like, and they don't look like this. That being said, the likenesses are really quite close in a chunky, low-poly sort of way. At the end of the day, though, the graphics don't really matter. Mainly because there will never be another Star Trek Voyager game as good as this one. Hell, there will never be another Star Trek Voyager game in general. So in all reality, the graphics in this game are as good as they're ever going to get. At least everything is recognizable, and it feels like you're actually on Voyager, not the Voyager, because for some reason, the Voyager just sounds like the crap. This game does need a graphical overhaul badly. And on ModDB, there is a high-res texture pack that does fix the graphics somewhat. As you may have noticed, the frame rate is, shall we say, variable in some gameplay clips. On a modern machine, the game runs like the crap. The PC Gaming Wiki is not all that useful either. While playing the game for the review, I got to thinking, this game runs on the id Tech 3 engine. I had these same frame rate problems in Return to Castle Wolfenstein, another id Tech 3 engine game. I wondered if the fix for Return to Castle Wolfenstein would work with Elite Force, so I tried it, and thankfully it worked. I got 60 FPS all throughout. All you gotta do is find your ini file, which should be in the game folder itself, and then find seta_primitives, and then set the value to 2. And in theory, you will have a 60 FPS gaming experience.
As you guys likely know by now, I am a big fan of well-made menus. And by the great Chakotay, are the menus in Elite Force excellent!
I just feel that a well-made menu shows that the developers legitimately care about the game they are working on, and all the menus for the game have little bits and bobs that move, and they make little text sounds, and if you click on certain bits, you get information about the Star Trek universe. It is pretty funny. Every time you launch the game, you hear, "Loading Voyager Elcar's menu system," like it was some kind of a big deal. Elcar's was a big deal back in the day because it was a touch screen interface. Oh my god! You kind of had to be there back then to truly appreciate what Elcar's represented. Music for the game is very lackluster. Star Trek had some good intro themes.
I don't care what anybody says. I like Faith of the Heart, damn it!
But its background music was never what one would call amazing. And as such, the background music for the game is largely forgettable, although I did notice some music that would later go on to be used in Starfleet Command 3. Really, this game could have been even better if they had had some better music. Compare this
to this!
makes it a whole new experience, doesn't it? Voice acting is excellent. The Voyager cast has been brought in, and they turn in some good performances. The new cast of the Hazard team also turn in some great performances as well, and it really feels like the cast actually cared about what they were working on.
Raven Software always likes to focus on fleshed out characters so that the gameplay and story can be that much more satisfying, and in this game, they have really outdone themselves.
You have the original cast of Voyager, and they make a number of appearances, but you mainly fight alongside the Hazard team, a bunch of red shirts that actually have a brain. Raven Software included massive backstories for every member, and their backstories go a long way towards explaining why these guys are so badass. Every one of the backstories has some sort of rough and tumble bit that explains why these guys are made of much more sterner stuff than the average gold shirt. Ensign Monroe is a player character done right, and he or she has a lot of character growth throughout the game. And now, a word on the Voyager cast. Captain Janeway could have been great. However, she was simply great-ing. She was hit by the bad writing stick so many times that she is seen by the fandom as some sort of evil witch. And well, she acts it in one episode, but not in another. For me, she is the weakest captain in terms of character, simply because we never really get to know what her character is as it changes all the time. Chakotay is another missed opportunity, as his character changes all the bloody time and is a waste of a perfectly good actor. Then you got Tom Paris. The writers wanted him to do everything and be everywhere, and thus, since he's supposed to please everyone, he ended up being the most generic person on the show. Poor dumb Harry is not that dumb, as he was more interesting than Tom, I'll tell you that. He, despite all odds, was actually a character compared to some others we could name, and Garrett Wang made the best of a bad situation, and his time travel spotlight episode was one of the best in all of Voyager. In one of the alternate reality novels, Harry ends up with a more human 7 of 9, and in that novel they have some pretty good chemistry, and on the show, I think if you were going to ship someone with 7 of 9, it needed to either be Harry or the Doctor, preferably the Doctor.
That's why they shipped 7 with Chakotay. Who wrote that crap? More importantly, who approved that crap?
7 of 9 is a contentious character, but I liked her as a kid because she was attractive, and at the time I liked robo-women, because I thought I could make them feel again. Ah, the ignorance of youth. 7 was okay as a character. She had to learn how to be human again, and her plots were some of the more interesting in the show. Then you got Tuvok. Yeah, I met his actor in real life. Nice guy all around. And his character Tuvok was one of the cooler characters on the show. He was a badass, and from what I recall, he didn't get Worfed all that much. The Doctor, as played by Robert Picardo, was what kept the show going, and I told him to his face that he was the only reason why I watched Voyager, and he seemed receptive to that comment. Also, I convinced him to see Pacific Rim. Robert Picardo was the best actor on the show. Sorry, Tim. And he had all the best plots and made the show worth watching. Oh yeah, there was also B'Elanna Torres. Ugh, a low-rent Worf that had little to no character. Yeah, there was the Barge of the Dead episode, but that was about it for her. You might have thought I forgot about him. Neelix is one of the most hated characters on the show. He was, in theory, supposed to be a Han Solo-ish rogue. Sadly, Ethan Phillips doesn't look like Han Solo, doesn't sound like Han Solo, and certainly doesn't act like Han Solo. And so he came off as just being an annoying, grinning idiot. Ultimately, had this character been cast with a different actor, I think it might have actually turned out fairly well. Also, why is Neelix a member of the senior staff? How pissed off must all the crewmen and ensigns be to have to report to this guy?
Now, let's finally take a look at the story.
The story opens up appropriately enough on a Borg cube. You are in the boots of Ensign Monroe. Your mission has gone bad, your squad mates have been scattered about the cube, and you have to rescue them. The first mission is what I like to call a hook mission. You get dropped right into the game in media res, and you have to adjust to what is going on. This mission will hook the player quite easily with its great design and layout. We get introduced to a number of characters that we're going to be fighting alongside throughout the game. We have Chin, who is introduced being awesome, and he continues his chinniness all throughout the game. Then we get to meet Biff Tannen's many times great grandson.
Positive. Maybe the aliens got them. Boom!
Looks like our scans weren't quite thorough enough.
Hey, Chow! I'm gonna jump! Catch me!
Don't talk to me, Monroe. I'm wound up. I'm a quantum torpedo ready to blow, man.
That's right! Thomas F. Wilson is in this game, and he brings a tremendous amount of character to it and is absolutely 100% awesome. It really makes you wish he was in the actual TV show.
Even crewman Chell shows up and is a fixture of the game as well. He was a very minor character in the TV show proper that showed up now and again. This segment also introduces Telsia, the hot badass chick of the game. As this is a video game, when you need to take down a force field, you shoot panels. Monroe shoots a panel and then the whole cube explodes.
Cut to Kama, Cheryl.
Ha! As you would expect, this was a holodeck simulation. This is one of the common ways of hooking the audience into any given Star Trek episode. Sadly, some more of the boring episodes use this to disguise the coming crappiness. Thankfully, that is not the case here. We have the Hazard Team, a group of Space Marines on a training mission that Monroe failed due to getting himself and his team killed, and Tuvok chews him out for it. Monroe looks dumb here when he says,
"Sir, if I may, how was I supposed to know the panel would explode?"
That point is not relevant, Mr. Monroe.
Listen, Big Mac, listen to me. You see, this is Star Trek. The panels will explode if you look at them cross-eyed. What did you think was going to happen when you shot the bloody thing?
In another Star Trek trope, after the holodeck mission is over, read alert! Time to go to the bridge. An unknown ship is attacking, and of course, their faces, they do nothing! So it's time for some photon torpedoes. I thought it was dumb that she didn't go immediately for the torps, but then Wizard of Oz reminded me that we're supposed to be limited, seeing as how they use them throughout the entire show. Excuse me for forgetting. The torps blow the ship apart, but Voyager gets sucked through a portal into a ship graveyard. This part reminded me of the episode from the animated series called The Time Trap, where the Enterprise ends up in a similar weird region of space. Since this is a first-person shooter, the ship is of course blown to hell from the battle and is dead in space. Also, power is failing all throughout the ship.
'Cause it always is.
The game really knows what it needs to do. You might think, duh, of course, but so many get so many simple concepts wrong. If this game were made today, you would have a cutscene and then get back into the thick of it. Not so here. After the cutscene, you are called upon to help fix Voyager. Raven Software is well known for giving actual reasons for things. Whatever next? So you are called upon to go to engineering and fix the warp core because you have a hazard suit on and thus will be safe from all the hazards. Why such suits are not already in engineering? Well, do you want a game or not? The path to the warp core is fraught with perils and you have to navigate various Half-Life styled hazards. Also, this is a Raven Software game, so you can fail. See this explosion? If you don't let that guy run all the way through, you can accidentally kill him, meaning you get to reload the save. Not because the game makes you, but because you don't want to be an asshole. This little Voyager repair interlude is quite fun and allows you to actually run around Voyager, and also allows you to take in the atmosphere of the game. Each little Voyager interlude has you performing some sort of basic task, and these tasks make you feel like you really are a member of the Voyager crew. After fixing the warp core, you get called to do what you do best, slaying foul Xenos. Shell excluded. The Xenos here are some scabs that have invaded Voyager in search of epic loot. And you gotta love Raven. They know that in a Trek FPS that the player wants to shoot some Klingons. So they use the Starship Trap as a good explanation for why they are there, and most importantly, the other characters of the game question why the Klingons are attacking you at all, since as far as Voyager knows, there is still a peace treaty with them.
Why couldn't the Raven Software writers for this game have been writers on the actual show itself? Voyager was crap with continuity.
The Scab Scum are easily killed, and now it's time for a new mission. The Hazard Marines are headed for a derelict alien starship in search of data on the Starship Trap. They initially think that the ship is abandoned, but it would be a pretty boring game if it was. The foul, inhuman xenogens are quite cool looking and well detailed, and are something that the actual show would have struggled with. The ship also looks damn good as well, and has a bit of a Covenant vibe to it. Thankfully, the foul the loyal crewman Shell, has no problem interfacing with its heretical circuitry. The enemies fall before the might of human perfection and Shell almost too easily, as many of them do not have proper ranged attacks. The level itself has a few puzzles here and there that are fun, and there is even a little emotional moment where Telsia, the hot action chick, appears to be killed, and Monroe takes it well. Seriously, lads and lasses, he is on a combat mission for humanity. He will cry later. Then this happens.
Oops. I think I shot that transporter.
Great.
Chill, you blue bastard! You and your entire species shall face exterminatus! Oh wait, this is Star Trek. Peaceful, happy, joy. Fine, Shell, you live. For now.
Eventually, you have to shut down the power core for the ship, because you always have to shut down the power core in order to progress. But when you try to shut it down, a foul Xeno appears and starts talking to you, and says that you will kill a bunch of them in stasis. Monroe, being an emperor-fearing light of human excellence, shuts down the power core and cleanses the galaxy of one more Damn, Star Trek again. Monroe instead talks to the alien, who reveals himself as an Etherian, and you also learn that Telsia is not dead, just in stasis. And you also learn that the Etherians were not even hostile, as it was all one big misunderstanding, and they free your teammates and give you the data you need.
Yeah, this game, it's totally just nothing but Xenos killing and space marine woohoos. There's no, Star Trek diplomacy to be found.
As always, in a Star Trek anything, you need to collect a science gun to help either fix or break the science. In this game, you need isodecium to fix the science. The level where you attack the Scav Scum base in search of their Imodium AD is the best level in the game, by far. And is that a Constitution-class saucer I see? The enemies in this level have ranged attacks, and there are a lot of them. Raven Software, I shall worship thee as thine Omnissiah. You not only get to fight Klingons, but you also get to fight 23rd century mirror universe humans.
Raven, there's being an overachiever, and then there's showing off.
And there is a moment where you have to save Telsia again. She gets kidnapped by the 23rd century mirror universe humans, and of course, you have to rescue her from the evil doctor. You can actually assist the evil doctor in administering some truth serum. You also have the option of just shooting him, but it's funnier if you help him. At the end of the level, you have to fight the first big boss, a Hirogen. Think low-rent predators, as in the writing staff on Voyager literally just made predators, but with cheaper makeup. He is still fun to fight, and he is a legitimate challenge, and you get his BFG at the end of the battle. At the end of the mission, some Borg beam in like some regular Trollolols and steal all the Imodium AD, and they also capture your commanding officer. But to make matters worse, when you get back to Voyager, everyone chews you out for it. Like it was somehow your fault that you couldn't stop the Borg sneak attack? You didn't have an iMod, and the fact that everyone but one or two guys survived shows that Monroe had to be doing something right. But all that aside, Monroe still ranks up to Shavetail Louie, and is given command of the Hazard Marines, and Raven Software is still literally doing its Johnny Bravo impression by presenting you with the next mission, a battle on a Borg cube, and of course, the one and only 7 of 9 joins you.
Raven, you really better be careful. If you keep doing stuff like that, you're going to make other developers jealous. And then who knows what might happen. You might get the ultimate punishment of working on COD multiplayer.
The Borg Cube mission is as awesome as you would expect. The Borg now can shoot back, 7 of 9 gets possessed by the Borg, and then you have to fight Species 8472. Sadly, they don't shoot back, but it's still cool. Then the Borg double-cross you, only for Chin to blow up the central node like a bouse. With the Borg defeated and the Imodium AD secured, it's time to head back to Voyager to finally fix the engine diarrhea. On some of the interludes, you can partake in the holodeck and test out your weapons, with one level being Klingon-themed. I would think that Worf would be pleased along with the Klingons in general. In some books, it is said that the Kobayashi Maru was changed from Klingons to Romulans. But let's be reasonable. Klingons are warriors, not SJW weaklings. They wouldn't be offended by Starfleet having them as the enemy in tests. They would be honored to be seen by Starfleet as still a threat. Eventually, we learn that a harvester ship is on the way to harvest Voyager's biological and technological elements, Strog style. It turns out that the Starship Trap is controlled by the Harvesters. They harvest ships and crews to add to the Starforge, regular forge, which is a giant space station. So, in a page right out of an earlier episode of Voyager, you have to board and fire a dreadnought. This is due to the fact that Voyager's weapons are, of course, still out of commission. Because, well, if they weren't, there wouldn't be much of a call for Gropos, would there? Tuvok accompanies the Hazard Marines. The opening hook of the Dreadnought mission is great. You have to use the light gravity to complete a puzzle, and the whole ship is just creepy. You eventually make it to the bridge of the Dreadnought and find the flight recorder. With that bit of creepiness out of the way, you fight your way to the main gun. This level features some robotic enemies, and the robo-bosses are suitably fun to fight. You fire off the end-of-the-world cannon only for it to disable the Harvester ship. So you have to yo-jo it back to Voyager to fight the Rachni? What are they doing here? Mass Effect wasn't released until 2007!
My God, Voyager must have gone to the space year 2007 and stole that idea! Let's just hope they don't go any further into the future and make everyone in the game ugly.
With the Rachni defeated, it's time for Endgame.
And here's hoping this Endgame is better than that bloody episode.
As Monroe is in command of the Hazard Marines, it's time for an epic speech.
Space Marines, today the enemy is at our door. We know our duty and we will do it. We fight for our honor as Blood Ravens, as Space Marines, and we fight in the name of the Emperor. And if we die this day, we die in glory. We die heroes' deaths, but we shall not die. No, it is the enemy who will taste death and defeat. We will descend upon the foe. We will overwhelm them. We will leave none alive. We are the Space Marines. We are the Emperor's fury.
His actual speech is pretty good as well, and they head over to the Forge to do some Xenos killing. Chill excluded. The final mission is quite fun, and the new enemies are still too melee heavy, but they can be a bit of a challenge here and there. The puzzles are quite good as well, with one requiring you to use your phaser to find an invisible path across a chasm. The final boss is something straight out of Quake. It's a big brain that says that the Forge is designed to take over the whole universe in the name of the Forsoth.
The whole universe? Really? You haven't even conquered a tiny fraction of one quadrant of one galaxy. By the time you even conquer a whole quadrant, or maybe two, it'll be the bloody omega point and the entire galaxy will implode!
The boss fight with the Macron is decent enough, but not really difficult, if you know what you're doing at least. And Monroe slays the overconfident Xenos in the name of humanity. And chill. And the game ends with Voyager having moved 200 light years closer to the Alpha Quadrant, cause science. And Monroe enters the history books as one of the great FPS protagonists. Literally, he is 1/8 as epic as Kyle the Beard Katarn. The end. Raven Software proved that with proper writing, Voyager could be amazing. They went one step beyond in making this game. They didn't just make another episode of the TV series. Oh no. This is what a Voyager movie should have been like. And this is as close to a Voyager movie as we will ever get. They made a Star Trek FPS still feel like Star Trek. And they kept all the diplomacy that one would want from a Star Trek game. The only cons for the game are the poor teammate AI and somewhat easy enemies. The game is still a masterpiece of first-person shooting, even if the shooting itself is not as good as other Raven Software games. But note, I said other Raven Software games, meaning it is still top tier nonetheless.
Do I even have to say it? Game good. Play game good. GeneralLotz, wish good. Elite Force 2, and good. Halo 2, or whatever, make happy.
If you enjoyed my review of Star Trek Voyager Elite Force, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you these awesome video game reviews.